It's Dr. X here, and this week's lecture is all about the process of change. I'll be talking about social change, about social movements, um, and collective behavior. The slides for this week are from Our Social World, third edition, chapter 14, The Process of Change. So, what is the process of change? Well, in order to understand change processes in our culture, you first have to understand what social change is. Social change is variations or alterations that happen over time in our behavior patterns, in our culture, and in the structure of society. Now, when we're talking about our culture, I'm going to specifically be talking about norms and values that change over time. Some of it is controllable, some isn't. Um, Change can happen rapidly or gradually, depending on what's changing. It can be inevitable. Some changes will be inevitable, while others will be ubiquitous. Change can happen at one level and then impact what happens at another level. So change impacts all aspects of culture, all elements of our culture. When it comes to the change process and social change, the process of social change, there are two key factors that trigger change in our society. One is strain, one is stress. So as you're doing your readings, you'll see that, and watching the videos, you'll see that these two different aspects have significant impact on where social movements start and the directions in which they go. So it can be strain, internal pressure or change. For example, there's a conflict of goal within our goals or belief systems, either individually or within the larger institutions of our society, like the institutions of religion or the institution of education. There's also stress that can lead to change, where there are external pressures that force us into a change. So, for example, a change in our natural environment, changes in the weather, changes in the makeup of a community, changes in technology. Technology is a really good example of how um, something uh, something can come into being and change the way in which we interact, the way in which we communicate. Just look at social media today. Collective behavior. First, I'll make the distinction about what collective behavior is. So, as you're going through your readings and looking at the videos this week, collective behavior is that behavior which is spontaneous, disorganized group action that often violates our social norms. So, crowd behavior is an example of that. Crowd behavior is a collective behavior in which the crowd acts, at least temporarily, as a unified group. Crowd behaviors are behaviors like mobs or riots or panics. Um, on the other side of that, there's mass behavior. Individuals communicate and respond in a similar manner to a ambiguous situation. So, mass behavior would be like rumors, fashion. Um, Unlike social movement, these forms of collective behaviors, they lack the same level of a hierarchy of authority, divisions of labor, and a sense of group action that social movements have. So when you look at the spectrum of collective behaviors, it can run the gamut from spontaneous and often violent behavior, like that happens in mobs and riots and panics, to less spontaneous and seldom violent behaviors like rumors, fads, fashions. So, social movements, on the other hand, are um, consciously organized attempts outside of established institutions to enhance or resist change through group action. So, social movements don't always have to just be about revolution or about moving toward change in that respect, completely throwing something out and starting again. Social movements can be about resisting change as well. But social movements have a focus on a common interest. They often have an organization leader and goals. They're most common in industrialized or post-industrial societies where diverse groups advocate for their own interests. They're usually begun by an individual outside of the power structure, and they may stimulate counter movements. So, a social movement can lead to other movements against whatever the original movement was. Social movements require the following: individuals must share basic values, ideals, and statutes. Um, there must be a pre existing communication network. In a lot of social movements, for some grassroots movements that look like community organizations being the center of the movement, and then communication going out from there. Communication, verbal communication, speeches, underground networks of communication. And now, today, for social movements, we're seeing a lot of social networking sites and social media being used as basis for communication. There's a strain or precipitating event that galvanizes people, that brings people together. There is usually effective leadership that emerges, even if in the beginning it's not evident, it emerges along the way. And members develop a sense of efficacy and potential success. So, those are some of the characteristics and the requirements for a social movement formation. So, the types of social movements you'll see in the readings and in the learning module this week. There are expressive social movements. Uh, an expressive social movement is one that focuses on changing people, saving them from some kind of corrupt lifestyle, what's seen in the norms as corrupt. Um, Social reform movements, those movements seek to change some aspect of society. Revolutionary social movements, that's an attempt to bring about total change in a society by overthrowing existing power structures and then replacing them with new ones. There is resistance or regressive social movements, and those are social movements where you see that see change as a threat to societal values and want to maintain the status quo. They try to protect existing systems and restore old ones. That may sound familiar in our current political environment. And then global transnationalism, that type of social movement takes place across societies and focuses on large scale global issues. And then I'm ending with this final slide about the ways in which revolution is being pushed forward quickly now in our society. Unlike in any other time in history, information is so quickly and readily available. And it's readily available because of social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. All of these sites give people opportunities to immediately send out information about movements. And because of the use of these technologies, we've seen social movements in the last five years in particular um, become extremely to move quickly into action and extremely impactful in the growth of social movements in our society because of the immediacy of information that's available because of these environments. So, always remember that technology can have um, an impact on the size and growth of social movements. All we have to do is look at the Black Lives Matter movement, the Marching for Our Lives movement, Me Too movement. Those are all examples of how social movements have advanced because of the use of social media and technology. Okay, great. That's it for this week. Enjoy the rest of your module.